Hello, I'm Stephan. I'm a professor of entrepreneurship at King's Business School, King's College London, and I've been doing research on entrepreneurs' well-being and happiness for just under 20 years, and I'm really delighted to share some of those insights with you today during the Happiness Festival 2020. Entrepreneurs, just to clarify that, are predominantly small business owners and the self-employed, and they really are the backbone of our economies. They make up most businesses in Europe, for instance, 99%, provide 2/3 of all employment, and are also extremely important economically, accounting for over half of economic output. So research on entrepreneurs' happiness has been going on for 60 years, and what I'm going to talk about today is based on a systematic evidence review that I compiled of this research. So why would we even care about entrepreneurs' well-being and happiness, other than that I think it's a fascinating research topic? Well, there are at least 3 solid reasons why we should care about entrepreneurs' happiness. If you are an entrepreneur, there is a good chance you want to be happy, so it's something that's important to you. In fact, we see that many entrepreneurs start out to become entrepreneurs because they think that they can achieve much more happiness in that career than working for somebody else. And we also see that entrepreneurs, once they are leading businesses, use their own happiness as a yardstick to judge whether they're successful in what they're doing. And happiness also matters very tangibly for the performance of the business. So in brief, you can say that happy entrepreneurs lead more successful businesses. In part, that is because you work harder when you're happy, but you're also more creative when you're happy. You make new connections and you introduce more innovations. And we know that happy entrepreneurs are more persistent. In fact, it sometimes is the case that entrepreneurs keep on running businesses that are economically not performing very well, but because they enjoy what they're doing, they keep being business owners. And increasingly, we notice that entrepreneurs' well-being also matters for others. So it matters for their life partners and children. So if the entrepreneur is happy, that spills over positively. But also, if the entrepreneurs are stressed, you can imagine that that also spills over and impacts the life partners, for instance. We notice that entrepreneurs' happiness and well-being is increasingly relevant to investors, and they actually see entrepreneurs' well-being and how well entrepreneurs look after themselves as almost a risk management strategy, because they know that well-being is related to productivity, but also to mental and physical health and illness, respectively. And we notice that entrepreneurs' well-being, because they're at the top of their organizations when they have employees, can quite profoundly influence their employees, both positively and negatively. So I now want to turn to the specific well-being resources and also drains on entrepreneurs' well-being. And it's important to understand what are the drivers and also impediments to your well-being, because noticing these resources and drains really is a first step of developing a strategy really for enhancing your well-being. So I want to talk about 2 key aspects in terms of well-being resources and drains. The first has to do with the nature of work, the nature of entrepreneurs' work, and the second revolves more around the business and the level of financial resources available. So let's first consider the nature of entrepreneurs' work, which really is a critical well-being resource. First of all, there's autonomy. So the very independence that entrepreneurs seek, you seek when you become an entrepreneur, is indeed available through entrepreneurs' work. So that's great. And you have control over what, when, and with whom to work. And it is experiencing this autonomy, this ability to make decisions, being in charge, that fuels your happiness. However, over the course of running a business, sometimes this autonomy seems to slip away almost unnoticeable. Imagine you're having a key account customer. Over time, you actually end up doing mostly work with 1 or 2 key account customers. That's great, but it also limits your autonomy, and in times of crisis, when one of them goes away, then maybe it can be also detrimental to your business. So noticing the autonomy, kind of reflecting maybe on it, appreciating it, but also noticing when it slips away. Another key well-being resource in entrepreneurs' work is the meaningfulness of work. Work feels important, worthwhile, significant. It's often an extension of the entrepreneur. It doesn't feel separate from who you are. And that's great. It's also important to notice this. So sometimes kind of reflect when you're in a rat race, on a very busy day or very busy week, reflect why you're doing what you're doing, why the work is so important to you. And then entrepreneurs' work uniquely offers opportunity for personal growth that are not available in this shape and form in any other type of work, really. And it's the variety of tasks, entrepreneurs also often called jack of all trades, and the variety of skills that are required that constantly challenge but also give opportunity for personal development. And there is feedback, when things work out or when they don't work out. So these three things, there are many more, but these three things are key drivers of entrepreneurs' well-being. Noticing them, appreciating them can really help you to enhance your happiness. Yet we also know that entrepreneurs' work contains significant stressors which drain entrepreneurs' happiness and well-being. And the most significant is the high workload, so the constant pressure at work to work intensely, but also very long hours. We know that entrepreneurs work, in fact, the longest hour of any occupational group. And that's problematic because it can be really difficult to leave work at work. Work spills over into private life, and with that comes a loss often of social relationships. Yet social relationships are critically important for our well-being. There's social support from colleagues or in private life. And for entrepreneurs, as the saying goes, it's lonely at the top. So there is less social support available. In fact, already. And then there are unique additional social stressors from complaining customers to complaining employees. So critical here is to try and set boundaries, to not try and work too long, because there is too much of a good thing. If we work too long, we're no longer effective and productive. And also kind of to actively invest into building relationships. So we see that entrepreneurs who have business partners that they can confide in tend to have better well-being, for instance. And there is also the fact that the very resources for entrepreneurs' well-being that I emphasized earlier, the autonomy and the meaningful work, can actually backfire. Sometimes autonomy also becomes stressful because you have to make all decisions all the time, and often it's not clear what the best decision would be. There is not enough information, and it's very uncertain how things may develop, for instance, at the moment in times of crisis. And meaningful work also has the side effect that it can turn into an obsession. It's great to be passionate about work, and that's really fueling the fire, if you want, for entrepreneurs. But once one cannot let go at all of work and it becomes all-consuming, then that's probably a signal to pare back and make time for other activities. When it comes to the business and financial resources, what we see is very much a roller coaster. So the highs are very high when the business is doing well, entrepreneurs are thriving. If they view their firm as successful and meeting their goals, there's almost nothing that can rival that in terms of the positive impact on well-being. But what we also see is that the lows are very low. So when things go downhill, when financial problems occur, when there are shocks or crises, like at the moment, these are especially stressful periods for you as an entrepreneur. And it's almost disproportionate, the impact. So we see for employees, the same shocks or crisis doesn't have quite the significant impact. And that's because for you as an entrepreneur, if things go wrong with the business, it feels like that it questions almost your identity of who you are, the business you built. It also often means that because the business of an entrepreneur is often the basis for that entrepreneurs' livelihoods and maybe even for your family's livelihood, that there is more at stake than just a job, so to speak. And then there are also things like the guilt, for instance, if you have employees and you have to lay them off, the guilt of not being able to support them. I want to leave you with something that I call the entrepreneurship well-being paradox. And there are 3 ingredients to this. So what we see is that entrepreneurs, we know, have very achievement-oriented, confident personalities. And they also don't really have a fixed goal. As an entrepreneur, you can always do better. You can always try and get more market share. And we know that as an entrepreneur, you're working really hard. Work is intense. And what that leads to is a pattern of over-exploitation. So entrepreneurs are subjectively happier. So we know they enjoy their work. They enjoy the meaningfulness of it. They enjoy the autonomy of it. They enjoy that they can learn new skills. But at the same time, what we see physiologically is that their bodies are suffering. So physiologically, entrepreneurs are much more stressed than employees, for instance. And what that means is they're much more vulnerable to illnesses. So the first takeaway from this is to kind of think, what is your goal? Do you really want to get to the top, such as Mount Everest here? Do you want to have the largest market share? Is that the goals you've set yourself for your business? Because sometimes it's disappointing when you get to the top. As you see, I doubt that many people trying to climb Everest imagined that they would end up in a traffic jam. At least they did last year. That's when this picture was taken. So if the entrepreneurship well-being paradox is the challenge, what's the solution? The solution cannot really be to have less stressful work, because as I just said and outlined quite clearly, entrepreneurs' work is stressful. So the solution revolves more around how you can give your body a respite from the stress. And what we know from evolving research around recovery from work stress is that it's really essential to give your body time regularly, even daily, to recuperate from stress. And there are many ways through which you can do this, and none of them are magical. They're relatively easy to implement. The challenge is more making time to implement them and even trying to schedule them, building them into your daily routine. So the first one is to mentally detach from work. You probably all had it that you go home in the evening or stop working in the home office in the evening, and you keep pondering these work-related challenges and problems you had. Often that then kind of brings on maybe a sense of anxiety, of not quite sure how to resolve this, and kind of that is really prolonging the stresses of the day and taking them and further taking a toll on the body. So mentally detaching from work, stop thinking about work, ideally combined with physically detaching from work. So this is also granting yourself regular breaks during the day. We know that if you give yourself mini breaks, let's say 5 minutes every hour you work, they make you more productive and they help your body even throughout the day, help your body to avoid this buildup of the stress response. But also physically detaching in the evening, and it really helps to have dedicated areas, especially if you work from home, an area where you work and an area where you can unwind from work that's not at all associated with work. Exercise, physical exercise is really important, obviously for healthiness and fitness, but also to cope with stress. Spending time in nature is important. Nature might, in times of self-isolation, just be the garden, but even the garden helps. And regular sleep is really critical for recovery and giving your body this important time to recuperate. And if you do all of these things, you might also just have a bit more time for relationships, for socializing, to build up this critical social support that we know that entrepreneurs have much less of, yet would often be doing well to have, just because it's so critical for happiness. The good news is that there is no trade-off, so to speak. So if you engage in recovery and allow yourself the time to be away from work and break and stop your work in the evening, for instance, you'll not only be healthier and happier, you'll also actually be more productive, and you'll be able to sustain your business in the long run. So the screenshot here is of a study we did where we fitted entrepreneurs with sleep trackers, so objective measures of sleep. And what we saw was even more so than we expected, that good quality sleep really made entrepreneurs more creative the next day. So often we think of creativity as something that we might be even born with, but what we saw was that over half of our creativity, of entrepreneurs' creativity day to day, was explained by the quality of sleep and how they were able to unwind from work. I couldn't speak very much about the current crisis that we're in at the moment. I just want to recognize that it is dramatic for entrepreneurs, and it is the time to take time for yourself to look after your happiness and to help you build your resilience. We put a blog together that hopefully you find helpful, that has some tips and tricks of how you can do this. All that's left for me to say is thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed these glimpses into the science of entrepreneurs' well-being. Please do reach out if you have questions, want to connect. I'm very happy to hear from you. Thank you.